Welcome to Tampa Home Talk with your host, native Tampa real estate girl, Katrina Madewell, a full-time, passionate, out-of-the-box thinker, love for home ownership kind of realtor with over 21 years of combined mortgage and real estate experience. Tune in every week at this time for expert advice on everything you need to know about home ownership, finance, maintaining great credit, building wealth, and making your everyday life better, and how you can be financially successful today and tomorrow. Remember, love where you live or let Katrina fix it. Now, here's your host of Tampa Home Talk, Katrina Madewell.
Good morning. This is Tampa Home Talk. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're glad you're here. It's another Friday morning here in Tampa Bay. And traffic looks pretty good today. Nothing major happening like last week, so I think we're okay today.
What are you talking about? Who's the traffic reporter here? You or me?
Not me. It's all you.
We got an accident on the interstate, southbound, approaching Kennedy.
Oh.
You would have been in that mess. You'd been late. Good thing you got here early.
I'm going the other way.
No, it's southbound coming this way. Yes.
Oh, good. I'm glad I was early.
Right.
All right, so this is Tampa Home Talk. The mission of our show is to help you keep and maintain great credit, live within your means, and build wealth. We love to talk about anything in and around the real estate space as well. And so without further ado, I want to introduce our guest today because it is right on time with everything that was in the news last Friday and for pretty much the last week. Would you guys not say that? So welcome to the show. I want to introduce Michael Whiteman. He's with GeoView. Welcome.
Good morning.
And we also have Laurel Hall. She is an engineer, a geotechnical engineer. She's with Ground Down Engineering. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So first of all, I guess let's just chat a little bit about and maybe we start this with you, Michael, because with the sinkhole that happened last week, people have a lot of questions. Laurel and I were talking before the show. People are scared.
They are. I'm getting a lot of phone calls from people who are maybe within even a mile of what happened on Friday, and they're concerned that are they going to wake up in the morning and that's going to happen to them?
Yeah. And it's, it's a legitimate concern. People ask that question. I sell real estate. We've got stuff under contract near there. So, a couple of them are first time home buyers and they're like, what's going on? What is this? Oh my gosh, or people moving to the area. We get that a lot because they just don't know what to expect. So let's start first with our guest, Mike. And since you're a geologist and you're very familiar, right, with Florida's genetic makeup, if you will, let's talk about what a sinkhole is and actually why it happens, right? Because all that stuff starts underground.
Right. It's a natural process. In fact, it's made what Florida it is today. A good 30 or 40% of the state is really dominated in terms of the way the land looks by sinkhole activity. And what creates a sinkhole is that underlying Florida is limestone. And that limestone is susceptible to being dissolved by groundwater. The groundwater is slightly acidic, and it will slowly erode and dissolve the limestone. So what will happen is that you'll get fractures within that rock, and the groundwater will be flowing through it. More water is going to go through a fracture than the rock itself, the matrix. And the fracture will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually voids and cavities are going to form. And they're going to get to a particular point that they're so large that the soils overlying that void and cavity just can't hold up anymore. And so they're going to go through and collapse. So it can be a very rapid process, like what we saw in Land O'Lakes. That can be a cover collapse, which again, I want to say that was a real one-off. That's right. Like one in a century kind of
Exactly.
thing.
It's the crazy, bizarre things like it's just one of those things, right? Yeah. If I could back you up just a little bit, it's the answer you gave was wonderful, but it was so technical. So if we could draw a picture for the person listening,
sure.
You're talking about fractures and breaks. So let's back up to what is underneath the Earth's surface and what that looks like. So draw me a picture of kind of what's happening and what's changing.
Our bottom layer of the cake is limestone. And then sitting on top of it, we've got a layer of clay.
And limestone's like your rock, right?
That's the rock. That's the rock that we see on the beach. And then you've got a layer of sand. Well, that limestone, it's different than, say, up north where we've got granite and really hard stuff.
Right. So the limestone is the hardest surface under the ground.
In Florida.
Right.
And it's going to slowly dissolve. It just like, and I don't want to have people think it's just going poof. But imagine an Alka-Seltzer tablet. When you put it into water, it's going to go through and dissolve. Well, that process happens extremely slowly with limestone. That over the eons, thousands, millions of years, that rock is going to be slowly dissolved by the groundwater, and cavities are going to be formed. And again, these cavities are going to get large enough where the soils overlying that cavity, they just can't bridge over. They can't brace anymore.
Right.
And so they're going to collapse.
If I could jump in.
Of course, please.
I'm a neutral evaluator for the state of Florida. So a lot of my work, I go to people's homes, and there's a lot of fear and misconception on what exactly a sinkhole is. And not to use the words dumb it down, but what I'm really trying to do is
just
put
in
it
lay terms so anyone listening can understand.
Right. And I think the easiest thing to envision as a person who doesn't do what Mike and I do is to picture it as an hourglass. And the bottom of the hourglass is the voids in the limestone that Mike's talking about. And then above, in the top of the hourglass, is the sand that's holding up our house. And as time goes on, grain by grain, that soil, the sand goes into the bottom of that hourglass, which is the hole in the limestone. What Mike said about the clay, if you envision that you put Play-Doh in the top of that hourglass, over top that hole, it'll prevent that sand from going in. So one of the things we look at is there a clay layer above the limestone? That makes the propensity for a sinkhole to be less than if it's sand right above the limestone.
So let's talk about that. From your perspective as a geotechnical engineer, how do you determine exactly what's under the soil?
I drill borings.
Okay. And what does that mean?
We take a drill rig out and we take samples from the ground surface down into the limestone.
So it's kind of like, if you can imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to try to draw a picture here. You have a big clear tube. You shove it in the ground, and then you take out that clear tube, and you look at it, and you get an idea what's under the surface.
That would be great, but that's not what it is.
It's not what it is, but does it give you an idea in general?
Yeah, what we do is we take, it's called a split spoon, and it's a metal pipe that splits into two pieces. And then what we do is we pound on it with a known energy, count how many times we have to pound it to drive it 18 inches into the ground, bring it back up.
And that you count because that tells you how hard or easy it is to go on the ground.
Right. And that, we call it a blow count. So for the listeners who have had a sinkhole investigation report, they talk about an N value in there. That N value is how many times we had to hit it in order to drive that spoon. That correlates back to strength of the soil. So what we're looking for is soil that's getting stronger as we go deeper. If we see sandy soils that are getting looser with depth, something from below has to be causing that. So that's one of the definitions.
That's where you know some of your voids are?
Yes, or that the sand is in its way into the voids.
Gotcha. And that's why, like, when you see conditions like a lot of rain followed by periods of drought, that's why you'll see sudden changes, right? Like what we saw last Friday?
Yeah. When you get a lot of rain, that's creating a lot of weight. The water table is going to rise up with all that rain, and that's going to put more stress on whatever's bridging over that void. And so when you get a lot of rain, you can get these collapses. And then just the reverse. When you're in drought conditions, when the water table drops, you don't have that buoyancy effect. The sand isn't floating in water anymore.
Right.
And so it becomes heavier then. So we see a lot of sinkhole activity when we have really rapid changes, like when we go from wet season to dry season, or we get a tropical storm coming in. There'll be a whole explosion of sinkhole activity.
Right.
A great example was out in the Plant City area when we had our big freeze in, I think it was 2005, 2006. And they had to pump the water to go through and protect the strawberries. Well, they dropped that water table about 65, 70 feet, and they caused literally thousands of sinkholes.
I remember that.
That all occurred within a couple of weeks. Now, that was a really dramatic thing. That would never happen in nature, to have the water table drop that quickly. But that shows you what happens when you get a big change.
It disturbed the foundation.
Yeah. I mean, it changed the equilibrium. Things were out of whack. They needed to rebalance.
So, and there are different types of sinkholes, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that
No,
was,
the one that happened last Friday, isn't that a cover collapse sinkhole?
that would be a cover. And again, those are real anomalies. They don't happen very often.
And that's the one where you see the water at the surface, everything's floating around, it's not hollow, is that right?
Right, helicopters going over. The much more common one in West Central Florida is a cover subsidence.
Cover subsidence?
Yeah, and that's just and Laurel can talk about that, but it's just a slow, gradual movement of the sands and the clays down into those voids.
So is that kind of what you see where it's not a sudden change, but it's like a shifting, sinking?
Very slow and gradual. Occurs over periods of months, if not years.
Gotcha. All right, so we're going to continue this conversation about the different types of sinkholes when we come back after the break. So our special guests today in the studio are Mike Whiteman. He's with GeoView, and we also have Laurel Hall. She is a geotechnical engineer with Ground Down Engineering. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell of Tampa Home Talk. And if you have a question, which I know we have many, many questions, we were promoting this show, and a lot of people are going to ask. We are going to take your questions towards the latter part of the show, and the studio call-in number is 888-404-1010. Hang on to that. If you're driving, make sure you're not driving when you dial it. 888-404-1010.
Are you looking for your next home? The truth is that most buyers want a home, not a real estate agent. I understand. But factually, you need an experienced agent on your team like me. I'm Katrina Madewell with Keller Williams Realty, host of Tampa Home Talk. And I've been in the real estate and mortgage industry selling homes for more than 23 years. And it would be our pleasure to help you find your next home. Love where you live, or I'll fix it. Welcome home. 813-936-2302. 813-936-2302.
My name is Samantha Taylor, and my goal is to help you get more healthy and fit and enjoy the skin that you are in. It is time for you to get results. Call 813-377-2255. Again, that number is 377-2255. Kathy was sick of feeling overweight, tired, and not sleeping. She came to us because she needed help. My name is Samantha Taylor. I'm a health and wellness expert that's trained over 5,000 women in this community. For more information, call 813-377-2255.
The traffic survey results are in for this year, and Tampa remains in a tie with San Diego and Atlanta for 13th in the U.S. We're down from 84th in the world to 99th. Number 1 in the world is Mexico City. Last year it was Istanbul. Can you imagine what that traffic must be like? Join Pat George's Traffic Rangers and call him or Mark Charles with traffic problems at 888-404-1010. You can make a difference on Money Talk, 1010 a.m. and on FM at 103.1. Call us, 888-404-1010.
Listen up, Tampa. This is national best-selling author Chris Hogan, and I'm excited to announce that the Smart Money Tour featuring youth and money expert Anthony O'Neill and I are headed your way on September 19th. At this evening event, we will walk you through the plan that has helped millions get out of debt and retire with dignity. A plan that focuses your money on what matters most. It's time to live more and worry less. Visit DaveRamsey.com. That's DaveRamsey.com, or call 888-22-PEACE to reserve your Smart Money seats today.
There's a tree in the hole in the ground, and the green grass grows all around, green grass grows all around. And on that tree, there was a branch, the strongest little branch that you ever did see. Oh, the branch on the tree, and the tree in the hole in the ground, and the green grass grows all around, green grass grows all around.
And that, my friends, is courtesy of Pat George back there producing the show, always doing a great job. And my home is trying to call while I'm live on the air. You'd think they'd get this at this point here, but apparently not so much. So anyway, so before we left on the break, our lovely guest, and we actually have joining us by phone as well, Jerry Black. And I love the fact that all my guests know each other. How awesome is that?
It's a small world.
Yes, in your world it is, right? Mm-hmm. Welcome to the show, Jerry.
Hi, Katrina. Thanks for having me.
And Jerry has been on Tampa Home Talk before when we were on a different station, and we're glad to have you back. So feel free to chime in at any point, Jerry, when we're talking with Laurel and Mike. And before the break, we were talking about the different types of sinkholes. So the one that we saw last week was actually the cover collapse sinkhole, right?
That's correct, and I agree with Mike and Laura. That is the 1 in 100 years type of sinkhole, and I'm still kind of shocked by the size of it, especially considering the geology of Land O'Lakes. But again, just to put the listeners at ease, it's something that's not going to happen on a everyday occurrence. It's the slow moving ones that take hundreds, maybe thousands of years to develop, and those are the subsided sinkholes.
And I think a fair part too to mention with regards to that sinkhole, and I didn't want to change topics so swiftly, but I think it's appropriate for the conversation. And Laurel, you're probably a great person to chime in on this. But even the person that repaired the sinkhole recommended a $100,000 remediation as opposed to a $30,000 underpin, and certainly break that down and explain what that means, and what your thought about how that happened because of the way it was repaired.
I think that's probably because we're kind of talking about real estate too. That's a real topic that needs to be brought to the surface. What happens is when you do a subsidence investigation for the insurance company.
What's a subsidence investigation? What is that?
That's a sinkhole investigation.
Okay.
We don't call it sinkhole. I don't know why we don't call it sinkhole.
But that's what it is.
That's
okay.
what it is. Subsidence equals sinkhole. When we do one for the insurance company, part of our scope of services as the engineer of record is to provide a recommended repair for the sinkhole conditions we find at each individual site. In a lot of cases, the repair, well, in most cases, it involves compaction grouting. The thinking,
and explain what compaction grouting is. And there's different types of grouting too. Right?
There are. Compaction grouting is a kind of a cement material. If you picture what your driveway's made out of, it's that similar material without the rock in it, which we call the large aggregate. It has to be pumped into the ground. That material, if you kind of go back to my analogy of the hourglass, that material in a way acts like the Play-Doh I was talking about. It prevents, in a lot of ways, it seals up the soils above the limestone, on the top of the limestone, prevents the sands that are wanting to go into the limestone from getting in there. So it's the kind of the agreed upon best repair for a sinkhole.
It's, for me, a non-engineer type person. What I think of, it's kind of like with the compaction grouting. When you build a home, you build it on this really thick footer, right? Or the foundation, the cement foundation. And it's kind of like building a house on the ground compared to a foundation, right? You strengthen the foundation underneath. When you guys do the compaction grouting, is that a pretty good analogy?
It is. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people who are not in the industry actually picture a slab being poured underground and that you could actually dig it out and find the concrete.
No, it's not like that.
It's not like that.
It fills little tubes or holes or voids, right?
And it densifies everything that's down there. I mean, if you put like 600 yards of cement material into the ground and it never comes up, where does it go? I mean, it has to be going into layers that are looser. So it's densifying it. So
with someone like that sinkhole that happened last Friday, where they elected, I think, for 30-some underpins as opposed to the compaction grouting that you're talking about, what's that look like under the soil? Mike, feel free to chime in. This is quite of a question for both of you, I think.
Well, let me take the first part and then Laurel.
Hold on, I think your mic's not on. Laura, go ahead. We'll come back to you, Mike.
What happens, the theory on underpinning is, and I'm apparently a huge analogy person. So we have my sinkhole analogy. But
I think people like analogies because they can relate to them when they're not in your field.
Right, and I think that's because I talk to a lot of homeowners. This is how I talk. In my view, the table that we're sitting on eating our dinner is the best analogy for underpinning. The top of that table doesn't care at all that there's air under it. The load of the table goes down the legs of the table onto your floor. Underpins are those legs of the table.
Good analogy.
Are those the
good.
pins we saw in the video from the news? There were pins from the house that completely fell in. If you saw any of the videotape, they looked like some angle irons that were in the ground.
Yeah, those were the brackets that attached the pins to the foundation. The pins are generally a pipe, and it's pushed into the ground hydraulically. until you reach a certain pressure. There's a pressure gauge on it. The problem with underpinning is it doesn't address the sinkhole.
There's stuff still moving on underneath the soil.
Absolutely. And there's, particularly when they're pushed into the ground, they're pushed to a certain pressure. We don't know if that pressure is on the limestone. We don't know if that pressure has taken that load down to something stable. Plus, I think the more important thing is it only addresses the exterior walls of the home. When we're grouting, we grout every other point. One is vertical, the next is angled under the home. So we're trying to get the grout under the entire footprint of the home. The underpinning only takes the exterior walls.
And that makes sense, definitely.
But, Laurel, I think it's really important to talk about why a homeowner would make that decision when they had gotten the recommendations from an engineer such as you to do additional stabilization and grouting work.
It's cheaper.
Way cheaper. Like it was a third of the cost cheaper.
Absolutely. It was like $30,000 versus $100-something thousand.
It was gambling.
Yeah.
It was gambling,
Well,
and they
let's
lost.
talk about what that looks too. When I don't know how many yards they were requiring or asking or suggested to have repaired, but that's truckloads, right? Like truckloads and truckloads and truckloads.
Each truck is 10 yards. So if you're looking at 100 yards, you're having 10 truck, and those are the trucks you see on the highway that are spinning as they're driving. They have 10 yards of material in them. To pump, 600, that's 60 truckloads of grout versus putting these pins in. I think what happens is that there's more than one scenario on why people would want to take this route versus, in my mind, the correct route.
Are there times that the insurance companies push you guys to take the cheaper route, even though you're suggesting a different route?
No, I think it's attorneys at times who, it's not the attorney's necessarily fault. A homeowner will hire an attorney to represent them during their sinkhole investigation. When the settlement from the insurance company is decided, the attorney takes a percentage of it.
Right.
And that percentage is negotiated when you hire the attorney. So let's, for just example, saying it's 30%. So you get your settlement, you have 30% of it is gone immediately.
Well, let's use $100,000 example.
Yep.
That's $30,000 of it.
Right, it's gone, and then you have $70,000. Part of that has to do with the subsurface. Part of that has to do with fixing what happened to the home itself above. So you're stuck then with not enough money to do the repair.
So if it were me and I had to pick, I would put the $70,000 below the ground and work on the house next. Would you agree with that?
That's what I would do.
Not a bad idea.
That's exactly what I would recommend as well.
And another thing people don't realize is that homeowner's claim and the settlement from the insurance company is different from a lot of other claims. Let's say you get in an auto wreck. The insurance company is going to go through and pay for those repairs, and those repairs are going to be warranted also through the shop. The insurance companies made a decision, and I think it was probably a pretty wise one from their standpoint, is that they weren't going to buy off on that repair. That's why people got that check. So the insurance company...
What do you mean they're not going to buy off on the repair? What does that mean? In other words,
if the insurance company managed that repair and it failed, the insurance company would be responsible. So they're much better off just giving you a check.
Giving them the money.
Washing their hands of it and saying, you can do whatever you like.
So if they do it wrong, then ultimately the homeowner's responsible at that point.
Yeah, they make them sign a release that if they take the money, they're no longer on the hook for the house.
Jerry?
Right. And it's a business decision. If they feel like the repair cost is going to exceed the value of the policy, they'll run almost every time and just say, pay them policy limits, and then you can decide what's best for you. And they completely get out of the ball game at that point.
It's an interesting conversation we're having, and I don't want to get cut off again for the break because the clocks are all jacked up in here, but we'll be back in a minute. We're going to talk about some of the grouting, the piling, what all that means, as well as what to look for if you suspect you might have a sinkhole. We'll be back in just a minute.
Well, your traffic is next on Money Talk 1010 and 103.1 FM. I am Pat George. If someone else's negligence has caused you to suffer a brain injury, the trial lawyers at Pop & Guype, a personal injury law firm here in the Bay Area, are the ones to call. 727-461-HELP or log on to papaandguype.com. Southbound on 275 approaching Kennedy Boulevard. Still lane blockage from an accident there. Hopefully they'll get that out of the way because we got heavy stuff back toward the interchange in the Dover area. 574 and Gallagher Road. Roadblock reported right in the middle of the intersection. Don't forget about the one by the stadium, Dale Mabry and Tampa Bay Boulevard. An accident there, and one in St. Pete still, 58th Street and 22nd Avenue North. And this report brought to you by Truly Nolan. Don't let bugs make it a bummer summer. Call the pest control experts at Truly Nolan, 1-800-GO-TRULY, or visit trulynolan.com and get rid of bugs for good. Well, we still got the rain, 40% chance at least today afternoon. Thunderstorms. Today's high, 91.
Listen up, Tampa. This is national best-selling author Chris Hogan, and I'm excited to announce that the Smart Money Tour featuring youth and money expert Anthony O'Neill and I are headed your way on September 19th. At this evening event, we will walk you through the plan that has helped millions get out of debt and retire with dignity. A plan that focuses your money on what matters most. It's time to live more and worry less. Visit DaveRamsey.com. That's DaveRamsey.com, or call 888-22-PEACE to reserve your Smart Money seats today.
You know, we're talking.
I think we got something good for everybody this month.
We got a lot of good things, and some of these leases are crazy. And you know, when you think about the Forte, we're leasing them at $199 a month here. Hey, folks, this is Billy in Carolina, and we're representing my store in Port Charlotte, my other store in Tampa here, Wesley Chapel. And I got news for you: $199 on the Forte. We're calling it Forte Frenzy Month.
That's
and
right.
You know, we got the Forte. We're sliding one of those huge screen TVs in, and we're giving you $500 extra. Whatever you put down $500, we'll match you with $500. We're doing an exchange rate program where we're probably saving people, I'm guessing, $700 to $900 a copy. Caroline, it goes on and on. What a time to buy, whether you're shopping Facillo in Wesley Chapel, Facillo in Northport, Port Charlotte area. Sarasota County, wake up. Huge.
MSRP 18,991, 36 month, 30,000 mile lease, 10,000 miles per year, 20 cents per mile over limit, 7% tax, 0 due at signing. Tax, DMV fees, dealer fees, $595 acquisition fee, and first monthly payment of $199 included in payment structure, $3,500 Kia lease cash, $400 military rebate, and $400 calendar rebate applied. $400 disposition fee, $400 early termination fee, no security deposit required. Offer with approved credit through Kia Motor Finance, or purchase a 2017 Kia Forte with a $3,000 factory rebate applied. Offers may not be combined. Prior sales excluded. See dealer for details. Pricing available from July 1st, 2017 through July 31st, 2017.
There's a brand new daily hour of fun and information on Money Talk 1010. Hi, this is Mason Dixon from the morning show, not only on Q105, but now a morning show on Mason Dixon Wide Open with Charlie the Sarge Oaks. And we get crazy every day from 11 to noon on our show, talking about just about anything. I want you to check us out Monday through Friday and join us for some conversation, because it's not only what's on our mind, it's what's on your mind as well. You can put your 2 cents worth in, even if it's worth way more than that. We always keep the phone lines open, 1-888-404-1010. And no subject is out of bounds. Well, you got to keep it clean. We do family stuff here. Now, the Sarge and I are both motorheads, so we do car talk. We've got a special segment that runs in the show every day. So if you're into cars, we got it for you. Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Mason Dixon, Wide Open with the Sarge.
Thanks for joining us on Money Talk at 1010 AM, 103.1 FM, and 99.5 FM HD2. This is station manager Charlie Oaks. If you have any suggestions or would like to do your own show, give me a call on my private line, 727-563-8831. Your suggestions have brought more local programming and the new FM signal. If you have an idea for a local show and would like to be part of Money Talk, call me. Money Talk is a family, and you have a vote in what the family does. Thanks for listening. 1010 AM, 103.1 FM, and 99.5 FM HD2.
Welcome back. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. We're glad you're joining us today. We are talking all about sinkholes, and we are fortunate enough to have some experts in the studio with us today. We've got Mike Whiteman. He's with GeoView. He is a Florida geologist. And we also have Laurel Hall with Ground Down Engineering Geotechnical Engineer. And then Jerry Black is also joining us by phone. And Jerry Black, we've had him on the show before, too, and he's been featured in many different programs. Just one that I saw was the one with the Corvette Museum, where all the Corvettes went in the hole. So he was on National Geographic discussing that, and was featured in their program. So
Secrets of the Earth.
Yes, Secrets of the Earth. Is that the name of it? If you look it up on Netflix.
Yes, it was actually on the Weather Channel, but it's Secrets of the Earth. Actually, a very fascinating show. But that was a fun show to make. I had to sit at a grout job for 5 hours and got sunburned. But other than that, it was great.
That's because you're a little Florida white boy here, like me. We burn. It's like burn, freckle, peel. So we were talking during the show, and there's so much conversation that happens sometimes on the breaks, and you want to recap it, but it just moves so fast. And one of the things Pat George was talking about, and he mentioned, was the house across the street, and we all pretty much are the same opinion. And really, this is for you guys to comment on more than me, but we think it's going to move towards the lake, right?
Well, in terms of geological processes, if you look at that large lake, that's Lake Paget, that is just to the west of where that collapse was. Lake Paget didn't form as a single sinkhole collapse. It formed as a coalescing of many collapses, probably of similar size to the one that's happening now. So this is just part of the natural process of how lakes form in land of lakes. So most likely, that sinkhole is going to go through and connect to that lake.
Yeah.
So
and not to scare like every single person, because I mean, I live in Land O'Lakes too. This doesn't want to make me want to move. No. You know, agents post crazy stuff like, oh, everyone's going to sell, the values are going to be. No, that's not accurate. It's just not.
No. But
and to be fair, and I think you and Jerry can both comment on this. You probably have worse soil conditions up around like Hudson, right? In some of those areas.
You want to hit that, Jerry?
And Spring Hill. And
Spring Hill for a reason.
Exactly. There isn't that, that clay or that Play-Doh layer that Laura was speaking of. All you have is sugar sand over very highly porous limestone, and it's like the sands through the hourglass without any kind of
Play-Doh
ability to stop that. Exactly. So those areas are a little bit more susceptible, but those are the ones that happen gradually over time. It's it's when that clay layer finally breaks is when you get those big cover collapse sinkholes. So you probably won't see anything like that in Spring Hill necessarily, or in Hudson, because the limestone's so close to the surface.
Right.
But every little bit of Florida is a little bit different. So depending on the geology, and where the limestone is relative to the ground surface, that's going to determine your potential for sinkhole development and what type of sinkhole might form in your area.
And here's the thing: this is what I tell everybody when they ask about this stuff, because we get a lot of relocation clients that come to Florida. And mind you, I was in California last week when this happened, and it's people are like, oh, aren't you scared of that? No, you guys have earthquakes and you could be on a fault line. So that's worse, I think. But you're going to have something like that anywhere you live.
I think too, I used to tell homeowners when they were in extreme fear that something like this was going to happen to them. And you make a good point. A lot of people move to Florida from areas where they have no idea what this is about. I used to say that your odds of falling into a sinkhole were probably less than your odds or greater than your odds of getting hit by lightning. But since we're the lightning capital, I've changed my analogy. And now my go-to phrase is, you're probably more likely to be stepped on an elephant in your front yard than to fall into
or
a
to be
sinkhole.
hit by lightning than to be affected by a sinkhole.
Yes.
Right? But it puts things in perspective, I think, for people. Because if you say, oh, you should be afraid of lightning if you live here because you're going to get struck by lightning, people would be like, what? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And, one thing on the Land O'Lakes, I want to dial it back a little bit. We geologists, when we talk about things, often it's like real time. In terms of the processes that occurred that made Land O'Lakes what it is today, you're literally talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions.
Thank you.
And so when we talk about that collapse in Lake Paget reconnecting with each other, that could be 10,000 years from now. Now, when you're talking to a geologist, that's a bat of an eyelash. Right. So we need to do a better job of explaining the period of time.
You make it look like it's a sped up process, but like you said, in reality, you're talking about thousands of years.
Long time. Right.
Yeah, and it's an important perspective and point to make. One of the things I want to touch on before we run out of time, because this is an important part of it, but Florida law actually requires every insurance company to provide catastrophic ground collapse. So somebody like what you see in the news, including the 11 homes total, the 2 that fell in, they, like you said, they all have the same attorney now, and the catastrophic ground collapse part of the policy is certainly going to kick in. And Florida law defines, 4 conditions that has to happen for catastrophic ground collapse to actually come in. And so the top layer of soil must occur abruptly, clearly that happened. The depression in the ground has to be clearly visible without any instruments. I would say that's a definite. There also needs to be structural damage to homes and the foundation, and a government agency has to evacuate or condemn the property, which again, that happened as well. And so it's interesting, but Florida and Tennessee are really the only two states that require insurance for damage from earth movement, if you can imagine that.
And it's not been around that long in Florida. I mean,
right.
When you say that, when I say not long, it's I believe it's in the 80s.
That 1985,
yeah,
correct.
That we even had the policies that said this is a peril that should be covered by insurance policies.
And we weren't as populated at that time as we are now. And so a lot of the people that we have moving to the state of Florida, it's going to affect the water table, which is all of what we're talking about here. And so an important thing too, and this, I want to mention this as well, because in 2007, the Florida legislation, they passed Florida statute 627.706. And this was clearly defining what sinkholes are. And that's because between 2007 and 2011, sinkhole claims actually tripled. And so if you remember the timing on this, I mean, that was the time that the housing market had just started collapsing, right? So December of 06 was the peak. January of 07, it started dropping. And I remember these insurance or, these attorneys promoting, hey, you can win the sinkhole lottery and get your house paid off. So that's what damaged, I think, what we have going on with insurance today. And it makes sinkhole insurance so expensive to get that most people opt to not have it.
And it was actually even more dire than a hurricane issue. I mean, Citizens was the state-run insurance company was paying out so much money, and something needed to change, because at Geohazards, we would go out to a home that had absolutely no damage. There'd be a crack in the driveway. But again,
and that ruined it.
Attorney came in, it ruined it. And then, we would come in, and sometimes we would find sinkhole activity and have to say, well, there's a crack there, so we can't completely eliminate it. And a lot of those people would get paid out and sometimes not fix the home,
right,
and leave it. And so then you've got that dragging down property values. I mean, it became a complete mess. So I do agree that there needed to be a change. I just fear that
it was so dramatic.
It was so dramatic, and it swung back to a different way to where nobody can get coverage. Just because insurance companies say they can provide it, if you live in a sinkhole-prone area, then the chances of you being able to get an affordable policy is almost none.
I live about 3 miles from where that happened. Do you think they're going to give me sinkhole insurance? Probably
if
not.
They do, they're going to charge you thousands of dollars on top of your premium.
Easy, so $3,000 probably.
Oh, exactly. So, it's great that everybody has the catastrophic collapse, but I mean, those 4 points that you made, that's for all 4 of those to kick in, like the house across the street where it was starting to eat their driveway. It hasn't approached their foundation yet, and I haven't seen the home, but if they don't have structural damage, even though the sinkhole is in their yard, they might not get coverage. They might not.
They would have to, though. Don't you think there would be some type of cracking on interior walls or something? Don't you think?
Not necessarily. I mean, if it's far enough away, it's what is structural damage, and it's defined by the statute. But one engineer could come in there and say yes, and another one can come in there and say no. I mean, from a PR standpoint, the insurance company, they'd be crazy not
to cover it,
not to pay out. I mean, come on, that would be a media storm nightmare. But we've been to houses where, there's been a collapse, but it's 30 feet away and it's not affecting the home. So the homeowner who thinks they have coverage because they have this visible and it's a sinkhole in their yard, they get frustrated that they don't have coverage and they can't afford to get the coverage for the sinkhole activity where if it's anywhere on the property.
You know what? And I think that one of the points that needs to be made is even if you go ahead and you purchase the additional coverage for sinkhole, you still have to meet that definition of structural damage before there's going to be any kind of investigation as to whether the ground shows us that there is sinkhole.
Right.
And the scary thing to me, and it's an opinion, is that we have the statutes defining 5 conditions for structural damage that have to be met. And if you read the statutes, it's open to interpretation.
As with anything, right? Any attorney can give you a different opinion.
And so, I think that the reason that it happened, I actually was aware of some houses that were in Newport Richey that were owned by investors. So the investor would file a sinkhole claim. This is before the 2012 statute change. They'd file a claim. They would get a sinkhole. They knew they had a sinkhole. The insurance company would pay them their policy limits. They would sell the home to themselves under another corporate name. They would file the claim again
and take a lot.
And take it again. And there were actually, I believe, 3 times in one case, the same house, the same people got the payout.
So we were talking about this before the show, and you learn something. I certainly learn something every single time I do a show, as I think you guys did too. And we were talking about Pat. Someone suggested, you've got a crack. You must get your home checked out. Get it checked out. What did that do for you, Pat?
Well, I'd like to tell you after the break, and it was not good.
Well, so with this being said, and we'll talk about this, I want to caution you just a little before you dive in and make a claim. You certainly should talk to someone like Laurel, but you want to definitely be cautious of it because it will tag the home and the person for forever. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. If you have a question, go ahead and call in. Pat George will take your call, put you on hold, 888-404-1010. Again, that studio call-in number is 888-404-1010. We'll be back in just a minute, and then we're going to tell you some stuff to look for in your home if you suspect, or just some things to look at, because we don't want people to be freaked out. We want you to know what to look for, and this is a knowledge-based show. We'll be back in just a minute.
My name is Samantha Taylor. I'm a health and wellness expert that's trained over 5,000 women in this community. Being healthy is a choice. It's something that we have to choose every day by what we eat and if we choose to exercise or not. And at the end of the day, when 5 years goes by, you can only look back and know that you are in shape or out of shape. And the excuses don't really matter. You've got to make health and wellness a priority. And if you don't, you will pay the consequences physically, mentally. The goal is to make eating healthy something that's important to you and making sure that exercising is a part of your daily routine. If you don't do it, you will regret it. My name is Samantha Taylor, health and fitness expert, and my goal is to help you get healthy and lose weight and keep it off. Call 813-377-2255. Again, that number is 377-2255. Call 813-377-2255. Again, that number is 377-2255.
Thanks for joining us on Money Talk. 1010 on the AM dial, 103.1 on the FM dial, and 99.5 FM HD2. HD radio is an additional way to listen on the FM dial. Check your owner's manual. You may have an HD capable radio and not even know it. Hear Money Talk on 1010 AM, 103.1 FM, and 99.5 FM HD2. Check out your owner's manual. It's not satellite radio, it's HD radio. If you got it, try us at 99.5 HD2.
What if you took time out for you? Just an hour of your week for a little mental tune-up. How you face the challenges of the day always depends on your mindset. Mindset Matters with your hosts, Dr. Gina Midyet and Roxanne Wilder. Airs today at noon on Money Talk 1010 AM and 103.1 FM. Dr. Gina is here to take your calls and share practical tips for self-improvement and finding your most authentic voice. Today at noon on Money Talk 1010 AM and 103.1 FM. Tune in to Mindset Matters, because it does.
Outside Interference Wrestling Radio is moving to Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Mark Charles discusses the latest in professional wrestling and old school stories, featuring live interviews and in-studio appearances by the biggest wrestling stars of yesterday and today. Join Mark Charles every Sunday morning for Outside Interference Wrestling Radio at 9 a.m. Catch the replay every Wednesday night at 11. Highlights and interviews free and on demand at OutsideInterferenceRadio.com. Follow us on Twitter at OutInterference. Follow Mark Charles on all social medias at The Legal Man Mark.
Listen up, Tampa. This is national best-selling author Chris Hogan, and I'm excited to announce that the Smart Money Tour featuring youth and money expert Anthony O'Neill and I are headed your way on September 19th. At this evening event, we will walk you through the plan that has helped millions get out of debt and retire with dignity. A plan that focuses your money on what matters most. It's time to live more and worry less. Visit DaveRamsey.com. That's DaveRamsey.com or call 888-22-PEACE to reserve your Smart Money seats today.
Welcome back. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. We're glad you're here with us. If you're just joining the conversation, we're talking all about sinkholes, why they exist, how they happen, what to expect, and just some of the stuff that happened with last Friday's event that have a lot of people in the news a little bit scared. And, you know, people, like I say, you're getting these frantic calls from people going, oh my gosh, is it okay? Is it okay? One of the things we should touch on is, you guys get these calls as well all the time, right? From agents and different people that say, hey, can you come out and check? Can you come out and look to see if I have a sinkhole?
Don't make that call.
You know, the scary thing is you'll get a call, and as an engineer, the only way that I can have an opinion as to whether or not there's sinkhole is to actually drill and look at the materials above the limestone and look at the limestone. And I'll get a call where someone will say, can you come out and do a sinkhole inspection? And I think that they believe a sinkhole inspection is somehow I walk around their house and there's some kind of, you know, flashing light that says, yeah, this crack's a sinkhole, and yes, you do, or no, you don't. And
right.
They want to pay about $100 to have somebody do something like that, and it's not even possible.
It's really no different than the defective drywall or Chinese drywall that was imported. You can't, inspectors can't see behind those markings. They can see behind some of them, but they can't see behind every piece of sheetrock. And so it's no different. You can't see in the ground without boring down in.
No, and a lot of times the people that will come out for a free sinkhole inspection, and if you saw me, I'm making air quotes.
Yeah, if you get an engineer to come out for free, it's probably about the advice is worth as much as you're paying. How's that?
And it's usually not an engineer. You'll either get a contractor who's a marketing person who wants to find a sinkhole or tell you that there's a sinkhole, create some kind of fear and frenzy, or you have the people that tend to make money when they represent you.
Yeah.
If you have a sinkhole.
All right, so let's talk about what are some warning signs, what are some things that if you see these or experience these in your home, you should be concerned. And mind you, sometimes you may have one of these things. If you have a lot of these things or all of these things, definitely like red flags should be chiming in your head. So what are some of the things that you see?
I guess I'll take this one as an engineer again. Settlement, and this is another, I need to kind of qualify. Settlement occurs on houses because settlement is based on the movement of soil. We live on sand here in Florida. So settlement is not necessarily caused by sinkhole. The problem is that settlement that is caused by sinkhole used to be the only settlement covered by insurance. So you can have settlement. Settlement looks like stair-step cracks in the exterior home. In severe cases, the floor slab will start to sink. And when you walk in a room, you feel like you're actually walking downhill. You can see separation of the baseboard from the floor slab.
Yeah.
You can see sometimes if it's a ground down and goes up kind of phenomenon. Sometimes it's progressed to where you see the walls in the interior of the home that are not load-bearing separating from the ceiling.
Yeah. Any type of crack straight through block on the inside of the home. I'm not an engineer.
Or
but
exterior.
Definitely exterior and interior. But I'm not an engineer, but if I see that stuff in the field as an agent, I'm like, buyer beware. I definitely would caution you on this property.
Particularly if you're like, I'm sorry, Jerry, if you're like in Spring Hill, you're in an area that's prone to
super
it.
prone.
Yeah, then you really, those cracks, you need to be kind of, I wonder what that is.
Right, and it's just important to reiterate that every house in Florida, you're going to experience some settlement over the lifespan of the structure. No structure is going to be pristine throughout its lifespan, especially when we're, like Laurel said, most of these houses are on sand, and those sands just naturally are going to densify with the load of a house being put on it. But again, there are other causes other than sinkholes that cause settlement. You can be on shrink swell clay, you can be on organics or buried debris. It's just, doing your due diligence to make sure you're looking to see, do I have settlement? Do I have cracks in a concentrated area? And also looking at your yard, looking to see, do you have surface depressions? Is like, oh, wait, the yard is settled a little bit over there. Being very aware of, the shape of your house, what condition it's in, because we've been to plenty of houses where you could tell nobody's paid attention to it for 20 years.
Yeah.
The
other thing,
all of a
too,
sudden it's like, oh, I think I have a sinkhole.
Right.
Like, no, you just didn't take care of your home.
That's called a deferred maintenance issue. That's what we call that in real estate. The other thing that nobody mentioned yet either is the windows. A lot of times that's a telltale sign when the windows are all crooked or racked or they don't open and close easily.
Doors and windows.
They're crooked. They slant. They don't quite open or shut right.
Right, because that means something has moved.
Yeah, and it's and a lot of times I've seen properties where literally the corner, like you were talking earlier in the show, the corner of the house is kind of like sinking, and there's cracks, and it kind of goes down towards that corner.
Right, and that's kind of almost a no-brainer that there's settlement, but then again, going back, settlement may not be caused by sinkhole.
I would go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jerry. One of the things that homeowners can do, Jerry had mentioned that surface depression. We go out to a lot of homes and we'll bring our ground penetrating radar to figure out what the depression is all about.
Yeah, and what is that? Can we talk about that?
It's just an imaging technology. It's kind of like sonar, a depth finder on a boat, where we can look down into the soils and we can image the various layers of soil. And in Florida, soil levels are generally pretty horizontal. And so when we see them dipping down strongly or if they're discontinuous, that's a tell that, we might have sinkhole activity in that area. And that's the kind of thing that we do for people like Laurel, is we'll do our study. We'll find geological features that look like they may be associated with sinkhole activity. And then Laurel will come out and do a drilling.
What does something like that cost, and where do you start?
Oh, boy.
What does that cost to do a ground radar?
For a very abbreviated study, they're probably in the $700 to $1,000 range.
Okay.
But what I wanted to mention on the depression that Jerry had mentioned, if people would just go out and get a shovel and dig in the middle of that depression, I would say 9 times out of 10, that depression is where the old tree was that somebody removed and they forgot about it. Now the tree stump is beginning to deteriorate. Or it was the fire pit where people put trash. So they can do a little bit of investigative work on their own.
And gosh, we're so like we're out of time already. And I know that some of our people are going to want to catch up with you guys. So let me just go ahead and give our off-air number. And if you would like to connect with Laurel or Jerry or Mike, we're happy to connect you with any one of our guests. I could talk to you guys for another hour for sure. But you can call or text us at 813-377-2775. Again, 813-377-2775. That's our off-air number. We're happy to connect you with our guests. If you need some real estate help, we would love to help you too. Again, if you want to move in, move out, or move up, I'm glad to be your girl. 813-377-2775. Remember, love where you live. I'm going to fix it. Welcome home. Bye for now.